Welcome to this Cloud Builder level on multi-tier multi-zone architecture. You start by learning about a number of concepts involved when building a multi-tier multi-zone architecture. The multi-tier aspect refers to the practice of breaking down an application into multiple components where the network serves as the boundary between them. The multi-zone aspect refers to the practice of running a component in multiple availability zones for redundancy. An elastic IP address is a public IP version for address, which is allocated to your AWS account. These addresses can then be associated in a AWS resource such as an instance. A network address translation gateway is used to allow AWS resources in a private subnet to connect to resources on the internet while preventing resources on the internet from initiating a connection to those AWS resources. Using a net gateway amounts to placing it in a public subnet and then creating a default zeros route in the route table for a private subnet to it. A network access control list VPC resource acts as a secondary firewall to secure AWS resources. They operate by controlling a subnet's inbound and outbound traffic. A network ACL consists of an ordered list of allow and deny rules. First matching rule applies. If no rule applies, the traffic is denied. A VPC has a default network ACL that controls the traffic for all subnets that are not explicitly associated with any other network ACL. Unlike security groups, network ACLs are stateless. For example, if you send a request from an instance in a subnet, the response traffic for that request is not guaranteed to reach the instance. This example is the default network ACL in an account's default VPC. It allows all traffic from end to any IP address. Once data reaches a device, ports numbers are used to deliver the data to the appropriate process on that device. Likewise, the device sending the data selects a port number, in the range shown, to allow the response to be delivered back to the appropriate process on the sending device. This selected port number is referred to as ephemeral. In this level, you will build a two-tier one-zone architecture that has both a publicly available web server and an application server only accessible by the web server. You will incrementally build each resource in this diagram. You first select a region to create the VPC in at the upper right corner of the AWS Management Console. Search for the VPC service and select it. If you already created a VPC in the previous level, you can skip ahead. Otherwise, press the Launch VPC Wizard button. Here you will largely accept the defaults. Scroll down to the VPC endpoint section and select the None option. Press the Create VPC button. Here you will delete the default VPC. Don't worry, you can recreate it later if you want. Start by selecting the Your VPCs menu item. Select the default VPC. Select the Delete VPC item from the Actions menu. Follow the instructions. The newly created VPC is designed to support a multi-tier multi-zone architecture. By selecting the Subnets menu option, you can observe the four subnets. By selecting the Internet Gateways menu option, you can observe the Internet Gateway. By selecting the Network ACLs menu option, you can observe the default Network ACL. Selecting it, you can observe the inbound and outbound rules. These rules effectively allow traffic in and out of the subnets. By selecting the Security Groups menu option, you can observe the default security group. Selecting it, you observe its rules. All inbound traffic is allowed from resources with the same security group. All outbound traffic is allowed to any IP address. By selecting the Route Tables menu option, you can observe for route tables. One being the unused main route table. The two public subnets are associated with a route table that includes the Internet Gateway. Each of the two private subnets are associated with their own route table that does not include the Internet Gateway. Now that you have a VPC, you will first focus on creating the resources for the web tier. Here you start by creating a security group that will allow inbound SSH and HTTP traffic from any IP address and allow any outbound traffic to any IP address. You can access the Security Groups menu item from either the EC2 or VPC service screens. Press the Create Security Group button. Name and describe the security group with web. Add two inbound rules as shown. Create the security group. Next, you launch an instance that runs a publicly available web server with the provided properties. Using your web browser, navigate to the instance's public IP address. Likewise, connect to instance using SSH. Here you create the Net Gateway by first navigating to the VPC service screens. Select the Net Gateway's menu item. Press the Create Net Gateway button. You give the Net Gateway a descriptive name. You select the same public subnet that you launched the web server instance into. Create the Net Gateway. Here you navigate to the route table associated with the private subnet that is in the same availability zone as the public subnet that you launched the web server instance into. Select the Edit Routes item from the Actions menu. Press the Add Route button and add a default, zeros, route with the target being the Net Gateway that you just created. Start creating a new security group with application as both the name and description. Add an inbound rule to allow HTTP traffic in from the web security group. Finish creating the security group. Next, you launch an instance that runs a web server with the provided properties. You now verify that the web server instance can access the application server instance by first SSHing into the web server instance. You then, using the curl command, browse to the private IP address of the application server instance. You now create a secondary firewall to protect the private subnets. From the VPC service screen, you select the Network ACLs menu item. Press the Create Network ACL button. Name it Private and create it. You next select and update the private Network ACL rules as shown. Here you need to also allow inbound traffic from ephemeral port numbers from any IP address. Next, you will associate the Network ACL to the two private subnets. Verify that the web server instance can continue to access the application web server. Now it is time for you to do something by yourself. As an experiment, remove the inbound rules allowing inbound traffic from ephemeral port numbers from any IP address from the private Network ACL. Verify that the web server instance can continue to access the application web server. Recreate the application server instance and try to re-verify if the web server instance can continue to access the application web server. Can you explain why it cannot? A hint. Search the web for troubleshoot an unreachable instance. Remember to terminate the instances, delete the NAT gateway, and release the elastic IP address to avoid ongoing charges for them. Congratulations! You have completed this Cloud Builder level.